I'm Leah Messina from Sinuate Media, and I'm here with Jason Koenig, our Chief Operating Officer. And today we're going to talk about why people should hire a marketing agency. So Jason, we have clients all over the country and we work with all different industries. So tell me what are some of the reasons why when people call our phone, you hear why they're reaching out to us?
Somebody usually chooses to reach out at a point when they know they need to accomplish something and they're struggling to figure out exactly how best to accomplish that. That could be finding more clients, that could be figuring out operations, it could be staffing, but more often than not, it usually boils down to something that's happening in their business at that point, and they're kind of trying to figure out the best route forward.
Yeah, we see a lot of times that, sometimes it's not always a marketing issue, it's more of a business operations issue. Right. And you always say that is, we kind of are in that line between those two areas.
Yes. I think that's a great part of our team in getting an agency is you're getting both parts of that. So I consider myself more on the operations side and definitely the team more on the creative and the marketing aspect of our work.
Yeah, I think it speaks to the different businesses where they are in their evolution about when they're trying to do something, whether they're trying to launch their business or they're trying to expand or they're trying to release a new product. And then they come into this issue of, not only how do I do it? How do I get the word out there? Or how do I get more sales? But the actual logistics of doing that.
Right. As far as they're looking for the logistics of how to do that?
Well, whether they're looking for it or not, I think sometimes maybe they don't even realize that that's, the underlying issues.
Yes. More often than not, most of the time working with a client, you're going to go ahead and you want to get an idea of the business because marketing is only one part of the equation, as you were saying, and operations is a big component of success. So, and a lot of times we're looking to see if we can even be successful in our marketing and making sure if the operations is there to support it. If I decide tomorrow we're going to try to get 100 people to call your business, are you ready for what that operations mean? And or is there anything we kind of want to look at or kind of make sure is working best for the market and or can be adjusted to be more efficient, to be more optimized, to make sure that both your operations, your key metrics are being delivered upon and making sure your marketing is getting the right leads. It's the right type. It's getting the right leads, not more of them. So.
Yeah. We see this a lot, I think, in e-commerce space, right? When somebody wants to start an online store and they have a product or maybe a service, we see a lot more on the product side though, and they want to get it out there. And then it's like, well, what about shipping? What about inventory? What about packaging? And those are all such like secondary issues that people, right. don't think of, but it really more times than often puts a stop to the marketing side of the equation when we have to then help them solve those issues.
Correct. Yeah, and actually that's e-commerce is a great example. So anybody's new and starting out in e-commerce or wants to take their business online is a little bit different, or if they're wanting to start products and start selling those online, and they kind of ask, what do I need to know? What do we want to do? I say that we really have to map the process out no different than a brick and mortar location. Because at the end of the day, while the customer might not be standing in front of you when they transact, the technology is actually the easier part. We know how to put an item, list them on site. We know how to have payment options, how to do a checkout, put it in the cart. But when after that happens, that's where the magic on the business comes in. How are you fulfilling these orders? Who's going to receive the notices? How often are you shipping? How efficient can we be? And shipping is a continuously evolving and increasingly cost. And figuring out, the right mix, the right products, how to kind of do that efficiently, effectively, and at a price point your customers are willing to pay, because it's very easy to just all of a sudden trigger very expensive shipping costs if you haven't really mapped out and figured out the process. So I do always like to kind of tell them it's mapping out, just like if you were standing here in person. When they get that, how am I going to fulfill that order is very difficult, and it takes just as much work as it does to market and build the brand.
Yeah, so, we kind of took a look at that, about 2 years ago when we were looking at how the market was going and really, this whole rise of software subscriptions and like, the cost that goes into not only the marketing side and making marketing more expensive to a degree, with all the software that you need to do marketing now, but also the software to run your business, especially in e-commerce business. There's so many plugins you need. There's so many add-ons you need to handle all these components of your online store. And that, again, it adds up a lot. So, we started taking a look at, what does that whole marketing system look like for a business and how could we optimize it? And then we came up with this idea of marketing process optimization. And I think that's something that, theoretically people are like, yeah, of course I want my marketing process optimized, like no brainer, but it's really hard to do.
Right.
It's super hard to do for most businesses, and especially for somebody in the weeds of it, and the business owner or whoever's running that online store.
Right. Well, and I will say that as in our business, it is difficult for us just as much as it is for any business. For some reason, it's easier sometimes for us to do it for somebody else and perfect their system than it always is to figure it out for yourself. So as a business owner, as an manager, you have a lot of things you're considering and, deciding which one's priority and which to optimize and what you need to. We understand that it's not always the easiest thing to figure out as well. And sometimes getting somebody to look outside the box, look at it differently, or come in with some tools and knowledge for saying, hey, these are ways we can do this. And what we really always try to do when we're optimizing or when I'm working in an operations kind of side is just making sure it's tailored to your business. So if I'm going to make all of your employees turn left when they're used to turning right, I'm asking them all to relearn. So a lot of times optimization can as much be taking your system and just finding the few points, either the bottlenecks, the few points when if I could automate it or we could, give it a new path forward. But I always like to try not to steer too far from what you're doing. So if, you think of the person who wants to stamp every paper and do this one, then we're trying to also make that digitized and optimized, but still holding some of that tried and true because that is actually how the operations are done. So then you're not doing a learning curve and doing this one. I try to make sure that everyone on the team, we know what they're doing. And so when we're saying we're optimizing, it's just steps of efficiency. So if this
but it's also automation.
Well, that's one way of efficiency is to automate a task. So instead of you handing that or having to email, automation is the easiest one to do. We have to map that out. But there's a lot of other ways in efficiency. What can be digitized? What does not need to be? What other software can kind of be used to cut down on the number of times you have to do something? So in optimization, we don't like double entry. We don't like a manual task when it can be automated. A lot of things can't be automated. And that's why we all have positions. But, we're trying to kind of make sure it's that one. And the more in line with the staff, the team, and what you're already doing, the more likely it is to be adopted and the more likely it is to actually help. Yeah. Because if I'm telling somebody else to change everything you do, the learning curve and getting used to it, hopefully eventually it would. But if we can kind of make that system work very efficiently and just, anytime you have an employee and you make something easy for them, they're going to do it. If it's harder and I have to log into their system or now I have to change what I was doing, then there's some digital things that are affecting the optimization there, and that might not actually be able to help it. So.
Well, even on the marketing communication side of automation, with messages, whether it's series of messages going out or trigger messages going out, you hear so often where, you have two different sequences firing at the same time and all of a sudden, somebody signs up for a newsletter or buys a product, but they're still getting the original series of, the warm-up sequence. And now before you know it, they have 7 emails in their inbox and they're like, whoa, I just wanted to pay for my product.
Right.
And so taking that step back and kind of auditing those systems, on a regular basis is tricky, but it's so important so you're not annoying your customers.
Very important. And I think you have to have an element of understanding that. And from our end, I think what we specialize in or kind of make sure of is that we're catching those. And the reality of situations like that are usually when you just don't have good data input. So you haven't tagged, you haven't classified all of your contacts, you haven't put a good structure in. So that way you actually can see what you're doing with automated messages. And they are a powerful tool. I get nothing but inundated with messages all day about saving my shopping carts, getting more sales, getting all this one. And all I think of is all we've done now is made everybody overdo this system so that when somebody hasn't really done it that well, they try by putting it in, and then they over inundate. And they over inundate with, I mean, I've signed up for something on trials or seen them, and then it's that fifth, sixth, seventh message in the second day, and you're just like, I'm out, I'm done. You know, we're kind of getting off there.
Yeah.
And that's just a good sign of, you know, you put it in there, but again, you didn't put a good foundation. You didn't say when or why or how.
Well, I think some of that is like the logic of the system the loop doesn't get closed, right? Like, and I had this happen to me in the last 2 weeks or so, where, you know, I first signed up for a newsletter because I was interested in the content. Then I decided to buy something, and then I'm getting both sequences hit me of, you know, hey, it's, you know, here's the deal. It's only going on for 48 more hours. I'm like, I already bought it. Like, so take me out of the other sequence. So, you know, then it's like, well, then becomes annoying. And then it's like, well, which one do I unsubscribe to, right? Like, and is that going to unsubscribe me from everything? And now that I paid for something, am I going to get unsubscribed from the emails I actually want and need? So there's like, you know, and maybe that's just because we know more, right? And then most people just like screw this, like unsubscribe.
Yes.
But, you know, on my end, I'm thinking like, well, if I do that, then like, did I just opt out of what I paid for? So,
and I think a lot of people have that question when they're getting them, and you're like, well, I do want to know my order's coming, but now I didn't want the 7 emails with it.
Yeah.
And that's really why we do put in things like, you call them triggers, events. Time is one of the most common triggers.
Yeah.
And sometimes you just think to yourself, what's an appropriate thing? I want to know, hey, I want to know you got my order, right? I don't want to have to go log into my credit card company to see if I got a charge. That's pretty logical. I'd like to see that one quickly. And then now should I be asking me, how soon should I be asking me about my product, or to buy another one, or to sell? I mean, some of that is, again, not always common sense. We look at data. And you definitely want to respond if you're getting bad open rates and you're getting other stuff. And so tweaking it, but you know, it's a little bit of common sense, or a little bit of having a good structure and kind of making sure it's set up, because the systems are there. They're powerful. And to your point of doing that one is, you know, they're not closing the loop, or it's not that. It's just turning on, and there's a lot of just little triggers and rules, we call them if statements, that we kind of make sure that are happening. And without that, it's just going to inundate, because that's what the system wants to do.
Yeah.
If you made the emails in there and you told them to turn on, it's going to want to send them.
And that's probably the best argument for why, you know, humans are still needed. AI is not taking over yet. I don't think it has common sense built into it just quite yet. Maybe we're like 2 years away from that, but, you know, somebody needs to take a look at it objectively. So, you know, we're about to go into the new year, and, you know, that's always a time when people are reflecting on, you know, what's worked well for them, what they're going to invest in next year in marketing. So I was, saw a survey on LinkedIn the other day. It said, you know, it was about 47% of people said that they were going to increase their marketing spend. The next chunk was they were going to keep it the same. And it was actually the lowest was that they were going to decrease it. So that's a positive note for marketing agencies out there, but also just for the economy in general. One of the most interesting things I saw like this week was, you know, marketing used to always be the first thing to go when there was a bad economy. And in 2008, absolutely. Well, 2000, between 6 and 8, right? Marketing out the door, right? Budgets cut nonstop. But what they said, this person, digital advertising has changed that. And I was like, wow, you know, that is an interesting statement and an interesting shift in where we're at in society and where we're at with advertising and our digital space now, right? Like, it's like maybe, just maybe, people realize that they can't let that go.
Well, yeah, I tend to very much agree with that. I think it was such an easy one because, well, marketing, along with a few other kind of, you know, different parts, but focusing this conversation on marketing, such an easy budget to cut, especially when you don't know how the metrics are performing. Yeah. When you don't track your leads, when you don't know. So,
yeah, this is all,
this is going to be hard. I don't need it.
Data age.
Well, but even pre-data, I mean, we've been doing this a long time. And I've done it for both big and small corporations and small companies, big ones. But even sometimes, you know, I've had a client come in, they want to run a very aggressive campaign. And let's just say it's even only a couple $1,000s. And then what always would kind of discourage me is then, oh my gosh, it comes in, it works so great. I have too many leads. Stop it now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then they stop it. And you kind of go, okay, great. You had those leads, you're working them. And then inevitably, they're going to come back. Why is no one else coming? Well, you kind of forgot that period we pushed a lot in there. You were closing them, and then, you know, then the well dried up. And so
Yeah.
if you're not knowing what the value and where those customers come, and I always used to talk to people, it doesn't always have to be, I love all the data selling and the data analytics, and they're amazing if you have all the inputs, but do you ask your clients how they found you sometimes? There's an informal call in, somebody will be like, oh, well, the marketing's not working. Oh, okay, well, how's the business? Well, we're really busy. But I don't think anybody became it because of that. And it might be true. They might not have. But I also think data, understanding on some light levels. And so you can always break more in. But it's amazing how just some of the basics sometimes are unknown. And that makes something easy to cut. You can do it with employees. You're kind of not measuring or giving the right assignments and not seeing them. And you might be interpreting that employee is not that helpful. But then maybe you've missed the whole point of how they're training everybody else how to do it, or they're taking care of this client that without them, no one else knew how. And all of a sudden that is a very valuable skill you didn't know. And so sometimes it's just knowing.
Yeah, it's a good point though, of like, they may not know to ask those questions. They may not have somebody internally that has the bandwidth to stop and think for those questions. And it makes me think of, there's so many great reasons to hire an agency. But what happens if you don't have that one point person, that champion to actually help you get these things, through the door, decisions made, get the feedback to the agency so that they can move forward, right? And, so as we're, looking at our next year, and as we start to offer CMO services, Chief Marketing Officer services to our clients, which is something we've done for years, but more on a basis of, they had a need. And we kind of filled that role because that person wasn't in that company to do it. And we're like, okay, well, we have to step in and we have to really work with their leadership to launch this business, to launch this new product. But as we are, starting to do more of that, thinking about some of the companies that we've worked with in the past, and when they don't have that person inside that can give that feedback, and because they're so wrapped up in what their day-to-day job is, like, and so many times marketing gets put on top of that, that they have to, oh well, now you have to manage the agency, so that's something that I think we've seen be a big challenge.
Very big challenge. Yeah, and it really can also evolve. We've seen it for small, mid-sized to pretty early stage, but have a lot of capital and a quick growing rate. And we've seen that too. Sometimes that can be because people don't know who to assign into a officer or marketing position. Well, because a lot of times the idea of marketing, say if you're an advertiser or you're marketing, or are you there for the operations? Are you there for how you're interpreted? How's your brand appeared? So it's multifaceted is not right.
Sometimes we report to the CEO. Sometimes we report to maybe an operations person. The one that it makes me kind of laugh sometimes is when we report to the CFO, because and no offense to CFOs out there, but that is not the most synergistic relationship when we're trying to get through marketing promotions to the CFO, who's looking at it very, bottom line.
I like to come into the CFO whenever we're worrying about how is this process working? Is it actually working to
what
you expect? And so the numbers work and you're closing out. They love working with me on that one.
But when it comes to what are we doing for a social strategy? Haven't got a whole lot of real in-depth, buy-in from the CFOs out there to give us feedback.
It's true. That's very true, looking at that rate. But I think within something like a CMO, Chief Marketing Officer, it's a very hard to define position. What we see a lot, so while we're a marketing agency, it's just kind of a little general, some of our clients. I have a number of clients that you could make an argument, are we falling under marketing services or something else? I'm running their corporate intranet. I'm helping them with their digital processes.
We kind of blur the line of IT sometimes.
Yeah, well, and to me now, IT is my email, my server for our files, access to your accounts or employee stat. Whereas we're looking really, again, on optimizing that process. And so even though we're coming in as an agency, it's really all about a process. And a lot of times even recruitment, how are you perceived is partly, I'm not finding any good staff. Well, we might want to use marketing to look at how we're positioning our company. Are we making sure that we're, employees are happy, but
Yeah,
No one knows anybody's
market
happy.
research. There's internal communications, internal surveying. There's
So
even marketing. It's some companies we've had to market the city or the town where that business is located to recruit people to move there, and it's like, we should be working with your local tourism office because they're trying to help bring jobs to this place for you.
Right. So we have a little bit of mixing of what all the marketing touches, and it really doesn't just touch an advertisement or a digital billboard. Both how the leads work. I'll go back to leads because for the year 2023, 2021, recovering 2022, I think a lot of businesses see that spike. They kind of saw different, a little more comfortable with marketing dollars, a little more out there. As into 23, the really question started to become the focus is leads, and not just leads, but business. Where's the new revenue coming from? So now what we're seeing is whatever spikes of revenue were there, maybe not cratering, but everybody is starting to feel at a minimum that line is kind of going down. And so really, somewhere around halfway of the year, that's the conversation. And that's the conversation 50, 60% of the businesses. But that's kind of the interesting point is also, and I remember talking to somebody, we also want good leads. And how do we kind of look at our persona? How's our product doing? And how does that work? And, a lot of these bigger firms we've worked with a very large one that doesn't always have that kind of role defined. And somebody's over here making the decision of how the user interface is working on this product over here. And that's the developer team. And then you have somebody else over here talking about the brand out in social. Then they have a third party over here doing sales and trying to recruit people into the products. And we go and talking to them and you realize those are silos.
Yeah.
3 silos. Somehow, how is it that nobody is kind of talking about what the user experience is or what we're selling out there as user experience is not actually involved in the conversation when they're designing and building it. And so when we just talk something like a CMO specifically different, versus some of the other kind of functions, it really is the fact that no one can really picture how many different parts it's supposed to touch,
right,
to give a little bit of guidance policy, but really to make sure things are connected and to make sure there's a unified and optimized channel there. So, we talk about optimization. There's big time optimizations. There could be AI changes, but it's considered continual improvement. We look at all the little ways we're improving in time and little parts in every channel, though. That's, you cannot optimize without optimizing all channels.
Yeah, no, it's a over, arching view of it. And it can't, if you forget a piece of it, the system becomes unoptimized.
Or you say, why did I do all that? And there's still a bottleneck. There's still something not working. We're still not closing leads because nobody is returning calls or emails are going to a mixed place or the product doesn't work even though we're out here trying to come up with the best marketing statement, get the ads in there. And all of a sudden we're going, hey, blowing up. Look at the leads. Look at the transaction. And it's like, well, not closing. Well, now we have to look at the efficiency of closing. Are the customers getting the introduction to the company the same way they are digitally in the voice? Are the employees speaking about it in the same manner? Are our channels, are our language, are our emails, are our communication, does everything go together? And while it can feel overwhelming, I guess we're a little more used to it. So I kind of think, oh yeah, it touches everything.
Yeah.
We look at it all. But, I came from tech transfer and innovative technologies and startups. And, you have somebody who's building an amazing product, amazing focus. And you know how easy it is to overlook one thing? To overlook the idea of like, well, how much the consumer wants to do this or how they're going to use it or involved or how are we communicating it? And especially out of tech transfer, everybody wants to be best, cheapest, fastest, faster, cheaper, better. And you're just like, no, that's not even what everybody's buying for. So you're kind of really missing a mark there of understanding like, well, it's communication. So when you talk about marketing communications, it is in any and everything that you do. But really, it's also making sure that anyone, everyone in every channel, which could be finance channel, could be the investors channel, it can be the clients, the customers, the future staff, try to recruit the best talent. All of that is coming into the fact that we need to optimize those processes. But really, there needs to be some unison, or I don't know the better word, but it's just some collective similarity, some driving force that can make sure that everybody is understanding on the same page. And the bigger the organization or even the more fragmented or the more complex, people silo, companies silo. And I think the biggest thing for looking at that one is making sure, hey, you don't need to do this forever. Like, let's stop at a point and say, let's get you on a framework that has given the company all of the things it needs to get there. We don't get there tomorrow. We don't get there next Monday. We get there over time, and we kind of prioritize. We figure out the optimization where we can. That can be a little bit of low-hanging fruit. That can be a little bit of a system. That can just be a sales trigger. We want to kind of build that process out, bring in buy-in, and kind of get everybody working in that one. And for lack of a better word, a roadmap. And honestly, that's what you're going to need if you're trying to improve your system.
You got to have a roadmap.
You got to have something. You got to have a chart, a flow chart, a roadmap. You got to have something that you're guiding towards.
Yeah. Well, there's so much on this topic that we could talk about, but I think that's
I can't. I do like the operations. I would like to sit there and say, oh my gosh, everybody has something. And I love when somebody's trying to help me up with the system, and then I find out that the process was, and then I print it out and then I go give it to them. And I'm like, great, we're going to build this system so that they're going to see it, a notice, and boss can approve your leave request digitally. It'll be saved in there, no paperwork.
This is so much better. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, it is. All right. Well, good discussion. Thanks, everyone.